My child, you have passed a final test. Before tomorrow arrives, I need you to hear what I am about to tell you, because it changes something important between us. Don't hurry through these words, or tell yourself you'll come back to them another time. Be still for a moment and let every distraction fade, because what I'm about to reveal has been waiting for this exact moment. You have just walked through something that transformed you, even if you cannot yet find the words to explain it. You may believe you simply survived another difficult season, another long stretch of waiting, another quiet battle that no one else ever noticed. But what you came through was far more than another hardship. It was a threshold, and before you step into what comes next, you need to understand what truly happened. You cannot carry this misunderstanding into tomorrow. I want you to hear me today, not you to hear me today, not you shifted, for what it is. Tomorrow holds new responsibility, a deeper closeness between us, and a different way of walking with me. If you enter it without understanding, old questions will return, and you will wonder again if you are truly ready. You will question yourself, and you may even question what I am doing. That is not what I desire for you. I want your heart to move forward firmly anchored instead of searching for certainty with every step. So listen with the quiet courage that has been growing inside you. Set fear aside, release your skepticism, and stay with me a little longer, because what I am about to show you will change the way you see your past, your faith, and your future. For so long, you have looked back and called this season struggle, delay, confusion, loss, endurance, and survival. Those words describe what you felt, but they do not tell the whole story. What you lived through was a test. It was never designed to make you fail, and it was never meant to wear you down until nothing remained. It revealed who you are when no one is watching, when answers come slowly, when certainty feels distant, and when your heart has very little to hold on to except trust. You passed the final test, not because you never wrestled with doubt, not because you were always strong, not because you handled every moment perfectly. You passed because you remained. There were mornings when leaving would have seemed easier, yet you still whispered my name. There were days when hope felt fragile, when prayer felt quiet, and when every step required more strength than anyone knew. Even then, you chose honesty, you kept your heart open, and you remained fully human. That mattered far more than you realize. I watched you through every hidden moment. I saw the nights you stared into the darkness, wondering if tomorrow would ever feel different. I heard the prayers that ended in silence because your tears carried the words your voice no longer could. I counted the mornings when you rose with exhausted strength that no one else ever noticed. I saw you question whether your effort mattered. I saw you choose integrity when compromise would have gone unseen. I watched you wrestle quietly within yourself while continuing to show up with faithfulness on the outside. I watched you refuse bitterness when disappointment tried to settle into your heart. Those moments were never small in my eyes. They revealed the measure of your heart, and you passed. You believed this test was only about endurance, but it was also about trust. Could you trust me without constant reassurance? Could you continue walking when there was no visible progress to point toward? Could you remain faithful without applause, without immediate answers, and without instant reward? Confidence did not always fill your heart, but willingness remained, and that willingness opened the door for your growth. What changes between us now is not distance, but closeness, not pressure, but deeper trust. Because you passed this test, I can speak to you differently. I can guide you more clearly. I can place understanding into your hands that would have felt too heavy for you before. You are no longer the same person who first entered this season. The storm did not leave you untouched. It rooted you. The winds that once shook your heart no longer have the same power over your foundation. You have become quieter within yourself. Fear no longer speaks as loudly as it once did, and your awareness has grown stronger with every difficult day you endured. That transformation did not happen in a single moment. It was formed through every ordinary day when you simply kept going. Now you stand at the edge of tomorrow expecting it to look like yesterday, but it will not. Tomorrow carries greater depth, and depth requires understanding. That is why I am speaking now instead of later. If you move forward without recognizing how much has changed within you, you will underestimate yourself once again. I do not want old doubts following you into a new season. Stay with me. Let this truth settle gently inside your heart. For a long time you have lived with your guard raised. You prepared yourself for disappointment because hope had wounded you before, and protecting your heart helped you survive what you were facing. That protection served its purpose. It carried you through the test. Now it is time to loosen your grip just enough to receive what comes next. If your heart is ready to release control and trust me, then let these words become your answer. You passed the final test because when everything around you felt uncertain, you refused to become someone you would no longer recognize. You did not allow hardship to harden your heart. You did not let compassion disappear. You did not exchange truth for comfort simply to feel safe. You adapted without losing the person I was shaping within you. That is rare, and that is what readiness looks like. Understanding must come before movement. If you step into the next season without recognizing what has just taken place, you will mistake permission for pressure. You will believe you must strive again, prove yourself again, and carry the same weight again, even though something has already changed. Before you take another step, remain here with me. I know part of you has grown weary of promises that things will be different. I know another part of you has learned to be cautious because disappointment taught you to protect your heart. That caution once served you well, but now it risks keeping you from seeing what is true. But right now, that same caution is making it harder for you to recognize what is true. The truth is not loud or dramatic. It comes with a quiet steadiness that settles deep within your heart, gently reminding you that you are ready. What I am revealing to you changes the way we move forward together, because trust has been built between us. It is not the kind of trust that demands attention or proves itself with words. It is the quiet faithfulness that remains when no one else sees. And that is the kind of trust I can build upon. I can entrust you with more than I could before, not because you have become flawless, but because you have become sincere. It is not fearlessness that brought you here, but faithfulness in the small moments that no one celebrated. You have been asking for a sign that this season is different, and this is that sign. It is not found in noise, applause, or spectacular moments. It is found in understanding. What you once called survival was actually my way of shaping you. What looked like delay was preparing you. What felt like weakness was strength, being refined where only I could see it. Do not hurry past this moment. Let it settle within you. You are about to step into tomorrow seeing your journey through different eyes. When this truth finds its place in your heart, your steps will become lighter, your questions will grow quieter, and you will begin to recognize that you did far more than simply endure. You were changed. Stay with me a little longer. You passed the final test, and what lies ahead is not something you still have to earn. It is something you have been made ready to receive. You passed that final test without even realizing it was happening. There was no announcement, no recognition, and no obvious sign telling you that every quiet choice mattered. It did not look like victory while you were living through it. It looked like staying when walking away would have been easier. It looked like choosing honesty when pretending would have protected you. It looked like waking each morning with almost nothing left to give and still offering me what strength remained. That was the test, and you passed it. You expected a test to arrive with clear instructions and unmistakable moments of evaluation. Yet the deepest tests rarely announce themselves. They are woven into ordinary days, quietly revealing who you choose to be when nothing is guaranteed and no one is watching. This test was never measuring your performance. It was revealing your heart. It measured your trust instead of your results, and it revealed your willingness to remain present when answers came slowly and your emotions felt worn thin. I saw you continue even when you did not feel strong. I saw you trust me when certainty seemed far away. I saw you resist allowing frustration to harden your heart. I saw you lying awake, wondering if anything was changing. I heard the prayers that faded into silence because you no longer had the words to finish them. Even then, you remained honest before me, and that mattered. You questioned your progress. You wondered whether your efforts were making any difference at all. Still, you refused to become someone you were never meant to be. You did not exchange your values for comfort, and you did not abandon truth just to feel secure. Those quiet decisions became the evidence that you had passed. It was never perfection that brought you here. It was your faithfulness in the hidden places. You kept your heart open when disappointment tempted you to close it. You refused to let cynicism become the shield around your soul. You kept listening for my voice, even when my silence felt heavier than my words. Even when prayer felt more like perseverance than comfort, your willingness to remain with me became an act of obedience, and every moment of that faithfulness was seen. If this message has encouraged your heart, and you would like to help make more messages like this possible, you can support this work through the support link or QR code provided in the description. There were days when it seemed as though nothing was moving. Progress felt invisible, and hope seemed delicate enough to disappear with one more disappointment. You believed you were standing still, but standing still in faith is never wasted. It is endurance. It is the courage to remain where you are until understanding comes. You did not rush ahead trying to force what was not yet time. You stayed where I had you, and that steady faith formed a strength that could have been built in no other way. You believed the test was only about how much you could carry, but it was also revealing how gently you would carry your own heart while you endured it. Would you become harsh with yourself? Would you allow shame to define your story? Would you let your questions become accusations? Instead, you learned patience. You learned to acknowledge your limits without surrendering hope. You learned to rest without walking away. Those lessons may not have felt like victories while you were living them, but they truly were. I watched your quiet obedience unfold through ordinary choices instead of dramatic moments. I saw you choose integrity when compromise would have remained hidden. I saw you choose kindness when bitterness would have felt justified. I watched you respond with restraint when reacting would have brought temporary relief. These were not public victories. They were deeply personal, formed in the hidden places where only I was watching. Those unseen moments revealed your readiness more clearly than any public achievement ever could. There were moments when you believed you were failing simply because the struggle seemed to last longer than you expected. But the length of a test has never been the measure of failure. Sometimes the time it takes is what reveals the depth of your endurance. You were discovering who you truly are when there was no finish line in sight, when reassurance did not come every day, and when faith had to stand without constant confirmation. That kind of trust is never easy, because it asks you to keep walking even when your feelings cannot show you the outcome. You never realized this was the final test, because the most important tests rarely announce themselves. They arrive quietly after many others, revealing what has been formed along the way. This one asked a simple but profound question. Would you keep moving forward when the journey no longer felt exciting, when every day seemed ordinary, and when nothing appeared to be changing? You did. Consistency became your strength. I saw the courage no one else noticed. I watched you resist the temptation to numb your heart. I saw you remain with your discomfort instead of running from it, and I watched you choose quiet reflection over constant distraction. Those hidden choices shaped you. They made you steadier, calmer, and more deeply rooted than you realize. You are not the same person who first entered this season. You may not feel triumphant, but you have become grounded, and that is a victory worth recognizing. Perhaps you have wondered why I did not tell you sooner, or why I did not make the purpose of this season obvious from the beginning. It is because recognition was never the reward. Formation was. I was shaping your heart, not inviting you to perform. If you had known every moment was a test, you might have focused on appearing faithful, instead of simply living faithfully. Instead, you walked honestly before me, and that honesty revealed the person you were becoming. You passed because you refused to abandon your values when they became difficult to hold. You passed because you continued choosing truth over comfort. You passed because you remained teachable, even when you grew weary of learning the same lessons again and again. You passed because you stayed close to me not perfectly, but faithfully. There were days when you felt invisible and wondered if anyone noticed the effort it took just to keep going. I noticed. I counted every quiet victory. I saw every morning you chose to try again when giving up would have felt easier. Those moments were never insignificant. They revealed the strength that was quietly growing within you. This test was never asking you to prove your worth. It was revealing what was already being formed inside you. It showed that your faith could remain steady beyond changing circumstances. It revealed that your character was genuine rather than performed for others. It showed that you could be trusted with deeper understanding, because you did not demand it before the right time. You waited, you endured, you remained open. You may still feel tired, because passing a test does not always bring immediate relief. Sometimes it first brings awareness, an awareness of everything you have carried, an awareness of the quiet strength that has grown within you, and an awareness that something has changed even if your surroundings look exactly the same. That awareness is where true rest begins, Release the belief that every victory must be dramatic to be real. The victories that change a life are often the quiet ones, and the strength formed where no one else could see is the strength that remains. You are standing here today because you made it through something that once might have broken you. Not because you became invincible, but because you grew. If these words echo the gratitude in your heart, comment, "You are worthy of my every breath, Father," as an expression of your praise. You did not even realize it while it was happening, but you were becoming someone who could be trusted with what comes next. You were learning how to walk without needing constant confirmation. You were learning how to listen without panic, and how to remain present when the outcome was still uncertain. Those lessons matter. That is why I am telling you now, because recognition belongs after formation, not before. You passed the final test, and that does not mean more pressure has been placed upon you. It means you are ready. It means trust has been established. It means the road ahead will feel steadier and lighter because you are no longer carrying the same uncertainty that once weighed upon your heart. You did more than survive. You learned. You did more than endure. You matured. You did more than wait. You became someone different, and I saw every step of that transformation. You passed the final test, and now that this truth is settled within you, you can move forward knowing your quiet faithfulness was never overlooked, and your victory was never uncertain in my eyes. I needed you to walk through that season alone, not because I desired for you to feel isolated, not because I had turned away from you, and never because you were unworthy of love or support. Hear this clearly, because loneliness has a way of rewriting your memories until refinement begins to look like rejection. What you experienced was not abandonment. It was preparation. It was a sacred quieting of voices so you could hear mine more clearly than ever before. There were people you expected to remain beside you who slowly drifted away. Relationships changed without explanation. And there were moments when you reached for someone only to feel unheard, unseen, or unsupported. You questioned yourself. You wondered whether you had done something wrong. You wondered whether you had somehow become too much, or perhaps not enough. Yet what felt like loss was making room for something new. Empty space can feel painful when you do not understand its purpose, but space is often where new things begin to grow. I needed you to walk through that season alone because you were learning to rest your heart in an approval that could never be taken away. For a long time, you found strength in being understood, encouraged, and surrounded by people who affirmed you. There is nothing wrong with those gifts, but they were never meant to become the foundation beneath your feet. Human support rises and falls with changing seasons, emotions, and circumstances. I wanted to build something within you that would remain steady, even when people misunderstood you or could not stand beside you in the way you had hoped. When the voices around you became quiet, you began to hear your own heart more clearly. When encouragement became scarce, it revealed what was truly sustaining you. When you felt misunderstood, it uncovered how much your sense of safety depended on others fully understanding your story. That discovery was never meant to bring shame. It was meant to set you free. I know how heavy that season felt. I saw the nights when the silence seemed louder than every sound around you. I watched you replay conversations in your mind, wondering whether different words might have kept someone close. I heard the questions you carried when you lay awake, asking if clarity could have changed the outcome. But clarity was never the deepest issue. Timing was. Some people were only meant to walk beside you for part of the journey. Beyond that point, keeping them close would have required you to make yourself smaller, to explain yourself endlessly, or to delay the work I was doing within you simply to preserve a comfortable connection. I allowed you to walk through that season because you were learning discernment. Discernment grows strongest in quiet places where fewer voices compete for your attention. When you are surrounded by constant opinions, it becomes easy to mistake agreement for truth. But in the stillness, truth speaks more clearly because it no longer has to compete with the noise. You began to recognize what brought peace to your spirit instead of simply following what pleased those around you. Your heart slowly learned the difference between what was popular and what was true. There were moments when you felt invisible, as though your absence would make no difference to anyone. I know how deeply that wounded you. But being unseen by people never meant you were unseen by me. Some of my greatest work is done where there is no audience. It is in those hidden places that you discover who you are without needing to perform. It is there that integrity grows without applause. Perseverance continues without recognition, and strength is formed in ways that no public success could ever produce. I needed you to walk through that loneliness because you were learning the difference between connection and dependence. Dependence can resemble closeness, yet over time it quietly weakens your trust in yourself and in me. I was teaching you how to stand with confidence without placing the full weight of your heart on someone else's ability to hold you up. That does not mean you were created to live without support. It means healthy support strengthens what I have already established within you, instead of becoming the source of your stability. You felt misunderstood because you were changing. Growth often creates distance before it creates new alignment. The conversations that once felt familiar no longer reflected what I was teaching your heart, and the questions you were beginning to ask no longer fit the answers that once satisfied you. That separation felt lonely, but it also revealed that you were moving forward. Remaining exactly where you were would have required you to stop growing, and I was never going to ask that of you. I know there were moments when you asked me to take the loneliness away. I heard every one of those prayers. Sometimes my answer was not to remove the loneliness immediately, but to reveal its purpose. Loneliness can feel painfully empty, yet it also has a way of bringing hidden things into the light. It reveals what your heart has been holding on to. It uncovers what you fear losing. It shows you what truly remains when everything else has been stripped away. I was closer to you during that season than you realized. The silence was never empty. It became the place where my voice could rise above your fear. I did not feel every quiet moment because constant noise would have distracted you from what was being formed within you. I remained steady while you learned to sit with yourself without judgment. I watched you become more honest, more reflective, and more compassionate. Those qualities were growing in the quiet places where no one else could see them. You learned how to pray without trying to impress anyone. You learned how to speak honestly instead of beautifully. You learned to tell me when you were tired instead of pretending you were strong. Those prayers reached my heart because they were real. You were no longer praying simply to be noticed. You were praying because you longed to be held, and that changed everything. I was teaching you to exchange dependence on human approval for the quiet assurance that comes from resting in my presence. Human affirmation rises and falls, but my presence remains steady. As you learned to sit with me without needing others to confirm your worth, your heart began to settle. You became less reactive, less desperate to explain yourself, and more deeply rooted in peace. This season also gave you a deeper compassion for others. Now you can recognize loneliness before someone ever speaks about it. You understand silence without rushing to judge it, because you know what it feels like to carry unseen burdens. That compassion will shape the way you love, the way you lead, and the way you respond to those around you. I did not remove every relationship from your life. I refined the circle around you. I allowed distance where closeness would have slowed your growth, and I preserved the relationships that could continue growing alongside you. Refinement is not rejection, it is wisdom, applied with purpose. You were never meant to remain alone forever. This was a season, not your destination. Every season has a purpose, and this one was strengthening your foundation. It was teaching you how to remain steady when support felt thin. It was showing you that being alone never meant being abandoned. You were being prepared. Now you know how to sit in silence without running from it. You know how to listen without panic. You know how to trust without needing constant reassurance. Those are quiet victories, yet they are the marks of true maturity, and they could only be formed where no one else could interrupt the work I was doing within you. That is why I needed you to walk through that season alone. I led you through that season of loneliness, so that when you walk beside others again, your heart will be free instead of afraid. You will no longer cling to being understood if it means abandoning the truth of who you are. You will no longer accept relationships that require you to become smaller just to keep them. Instead, you will choose connections built on honesty rather than performance. You were never abandoned. You were being refined. You were never forgotten. You were being prepared. You were never left without support. I was strengthening you from the inside out, creating a foundation that could not be shaken by changing opinions or circumstances. Now that season is behind you, and you are different because of it. You are steadier, your heart is clearer, and your life is no longer anchored to the approval of others but to what is true. That is why what comes next will feel different. You will not have to grasp for security or prove your worth. You will move forward with a quiet confidence, knowing you can stand whether people walk beside you or whether the path grows quiet again. I was with you through every step, even when it seemed as though no one else remained. The strength you carry today is the evidence that your loneliness was never empty. It was sacred ground where something lasting was being formed. While you were struggling, I was watching things you never imagined were being measured. I was not counting how many times you felt strong or how often everything went according to plan. I was looking at your heart. I watched how you carried yourself when no one encouraged you. I saw how you responded when pressure quietly built around you. I watched how you treated yourself when answers refused to come. You thought the struggle meant something had gone wrong, but it was actually revealing that you were becoming ready. I cared more about the posture of your heart than the pace of your progress. When life did not unfold the way you hoped, I watched what happened inside you. Did disappointment make your heart harder, or did it make you more honest? When silence lasted longer than you expected, did you run from it, or did you remain with it long enough to hear what it was teaching you? Those moments were never small. They were the very center of the test. Readiness has never been proven by speed. It is revealed by the posture you choose when the journey becomes difficult. I watched what you did in the hidden places, not what you displayed before other people. When there was no reward for remaining faithful and no audience to applaud your choices, I saw the person you chose to become. Did you stay true to your convictions, or did you begin compromising simply to ease the pressure? Did you speak harshly to yourself, or did you slowly learn to extend yourself the same grace you longed to receive? Those quiet moments mattered more than you realized, because private choices shape lasting strength long before anyone else ever sees it. I watched how you carried frustration. Pressure has a way of revealing what already lives beneath the surface. When life felt unfair, when your effort seemed unnoticed, and when clarity remained out of reach, I watched to see whether bitterness would take root, or whether you would keep your heart open despite the weariness. You were not always patient, yet you chose again and again not to give up on yourself or on me. That decision was never loud, but it carried great weight. I watched how you responded when uncertainty tested your trust. My purpose was never to judge you, but to see how deeply that trust had taken root. Trust does not require the absence of questions. It asks that your questions never become accusations. You wrestled honestly. You asked why. You searched for understanding. Yet even when my voice seemed quiet, you did not close your heart or decide that silence meant I had left you. You remained in relationship with me even while understanding came slowly. That is the kind of trust that grows through experience rather than assumption. I also watched the quieter forms of temptation. I saw the temptation to numb your heart, to fill every silent moment with distraction, to become cynical because hope felt too costly, or to convince yourself that nothing really mattered. Those thoughts came, and you recognized them, but you did not allow them to define who you became. You refused to become someone you would one day struggle to recognize. That quiet restraint revealed a strength that no one else could measure. I listened carefully to the words you spoke when you were exhausted, because weary words often reveal what the heart truly believes. I was never asking you to pretend everything was fine, or to force yourself into constant positivity. I was looking to see whether honesty would remain stronger than hopelessness. You learned to acknowledge your pain without allowing it to become your identity. That is what maturity looks like. You learned that sorrow could be spoken without becoming the final word over your life. One of the deepest things I was watching was your willingness to trust without having every answer. Could you continue walking when you could not yet see where the path was leading? Could you live with uncertainty without allowing panic to rule your heart? Could you keep moving forward without needing constant reassurance that you were doing everything perfectly? You did not always feel confident, but you kept taking gentle steps instead of standing still. That willingness showed me you would be ready to receive greater understanding when the right time came. I watched how you treated other people while your own heart was hurting. Pain often turns people inward, making them impatient, guarded, or harsh. Yet even in your own struggle, you continued to notice the needs of others. You continued to care. You continued choosing kindness when your own strength felt nearly gone. That was never weakness. It was strength made gentle through humility. I watched whether you would keep trying to control everything, or whether you would gradually learn to release what you could not hold. Control often disguises itself as determination, but underneath it is usually fear. Slowly, you discover that not everything could be forced into place. You learn to let go without giving up. That quiet shift mattered because it revealed that you were beginning to trust my timing instead of fighting against it. You believed the hardship meant you were being punished, but punishment is centered on failure. What you experienced was centered on formation. I was never asking whether you deserved what was ahead. I was watching whether you were becoming someone who could carry it without losing yourself. Readiness has never been about talent alone. It is built upon stability. I watched how you handled your own expectations. You slowly loosened your grip on the timelines you once held so tightly. You learned to live without guarantees, and that was never surrender to defeat. It was surrender to trust. I also watched what happened after moments of doubt. Doubt never disqualified you. What mattered was that you returned. You did not stay distant forever. Sometimes your return was quiet, and sometimes it was slow, but you came back. That return meant more than the doubt itself. I watched your humility as well. Humility is not thinking less of yourself. It is having the courage to be honest about where you truly are. You admitted when you were tired. You admitted when you were confused. You admitted when you needed help, and that honesty created room for growth where pride never could. Instead of closing your heart, you remained open, and I watched as you continued to stay teachable. Struggle has a way of making people guarded. It can leave hearts hard, defensive, and unwilling to change. Yet that is not what happened to you. Instead of allowing hardship to close you off, you allowed it to soften you. You listened when it would have been easier to stop listening. You reflected instead of reacting. When you recognized places where growth was needed, you embraced it with honesty. You were never determined to prove you were right. You were willing to become real, and that is the kind of heart where wisdom quietly takes root. You believed your struggle was evidence that you were failing. What I saw told a completely different story. I saw someone learning to stand even when there was no applause. I saw someone learning to trust without visible proof, and to remain present even when certainty was nowhere to be found. Those are the qualities that prepare a heart for what comes next. I was never watching to see how quickly you escaped the struggle. I was watching how deeply the struggle was shaping you. I was not counting your mistakes. I was watching your growth. I was not measuring your achievements. I was watching your resilience. You were never being examined for punishment. You were being prepared for responsibility. Responsibility requires a steady heart. It requires humility, and it requires a trust that remains firm even when life becomes difficult. Quietly, consistently, imperfectly, yet sincerely, you demonstrated those qualities. That is why I want you to release every burden of shame you have attached to this season. Shame tells you that you should have done better. The truth is that this season was making you ready. You were never being tested to determine whether I would reject you. You were being tested to reveal whether deeper trust could grow within you without stealing your peace. Everything you believed disqualified you was becoming part of what prepared you. The questions you carried, the waiting you endured, the quiet perseverance that no one else noticed, and the honest conversations you had with me were never evidence against you. They became evidence that your heart was being formed. Now you understand what I was truly looking for. I was never searching for perfection or performance. I was looking for your presence, your honesty, your trust, and your humility. Even when you did not recognize it yourself, those qualities were growing within you. You were never being punished. You were being prepared. The very fact that you are here now, still listening, still open, and still willing to receive, speaks its own truth. You passed this test, not because you lived flawlessly, but because you remained faithful in the ways that mattered most. That is why I am speaking before tomorrow arrives. The timing matters more than you realize. What is ahead cannot be fully understood after you step into it. Understanding must come first. Your heart must come into alignment before your life begins to move in a new direction. If you walk into the next season carrying old misunderstandings, you will misread what I am doing. You may mistake my invitation for pressure or confuse growth with a burden you must carry alone. I am speaking to you now because I love you too deeply to let that happen. If your heart longs for my presence, declare, "My soul belongs to you, God," and share this message.